Hi, I'm Mick Lynch. I'm a film and TV music composer and producer working here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. I've been working freelance for a little over a year now, and in that time I've had the pleasure to work on a ton of really cool film and TV projects. To commemorate that occasion of working for a year or so, I would film a little studio tour to show off how everything in my studio slash office slash prison sort of feeds into my creative process and helps me work how I need to. In this horrible digital age that we live in, I do most of my work using, my computer and my technology. I both write and record into Logic, which is my sort of software that this whole room is built around. I have a lot of little trinkets and bits of technology that help me out in that process. Favorite one probably would have to be this little 5-fader MIDI controller from an online store called The MIDI Maker, who is a small business that I really recommend checking out. And this lets me control all elements of the sounds that I am recording or writing with, letting it really be expressive. It's the difference between something like this and something like this. As you can see here, I have these two MIDI keyboards that I write, all of my sort of orchestral parts and my piano parts. Pretty much everything is written on here and then is re-recorded by real musicians on real instruments. So this is an M Audio 88 key MIDI controller that I use for more complex parts that span the whole keyboard, or piano parts where I need a lot of depth in the velocity of the sound. And this smaller Nectar MIDI keyboard is much better for, faster synth parts because it's a lot more sensitive. I have 3 monitors here in my setup. I have this TV, which I usually keep the, footage of the film I'm working on, if it's a film that I'm working on. This one I keep all of my tracks on in Logic, so each of these rectangles you see here is an individual instrument part. And then down here we have what's called the piano roll, which shows all of the notes that are being played at a given time. And then I can keep track of all the harmonies that are happening and making sure everything is lining up well. I also have this, which is called an Apollo Twin interface. This is what I use to both record real instruments into here and to control these speakers and my headphones, which are down there. This is my computer. It's a Mac Studio from, I think, 2023 or 22. It is an absolute workhorse and has not exploded yet, which is very impressive considering how much I push it. I also try to integrate actual sheet music writing into my workflow as much as I can because I just really enjoy it. Over here I have this sketchbook in which I keep all of my themes and motifs that I return to in a given project. I have Buttons and Life at the Lake here, which are 2 wonderful short films that I did recently. And as you can see here, we have all of the individual themes and musical ideas that I return to in there. I chose to do these ones as opposed to a more recent project because I have licensed these themes already so that you can't look at my sheet music and steal it. I also have this little smaller sketchbook here, which I just bought, so it's pretty empty. I'm just on the first couple pages here. But here I write, smaller little ideas that I have that are just bouncing around in my head and that I don't have a particular project to assign them to. I also have a couple, scripts from short films that I've been sent here. I also have some little bits of sheet music ideas that I've written that are also not really for any particular thing, just on paper over here in this cluttered pile. And yeah, that's about it for my technology. So let me show you what I have down here. I have some records here, a lot of sort of classical and soundtrack music because I put on vinyls as I'm sitting here and reading a lot of the time, so I don't listen to a lot of like lyrical stuff in here, but I also have a couple of my favorite albums, and these books down here are more about sort of the songwriting process and the technical side of things, or like specific composers that I look up to. Like we have a big collection of the Beatles music, a book on Debussy here, so we have a lot of cool inspiring stuff down here. This is a collection of Poe's poems and short stories, which I have it here on the end table rather than up on the shelf, because this is kind of my favorite to just sort of flip through for inspiration, because poems especially are very inspiring when it comes to music. Up on this shelf I have a sort of collection that I've amassed of these classic cloth-bound novels. I'm a big fan of, you know, Victorian and sort of 19th century literature, so I have a lot of books from that story, especially horror stories. I have, you know, Frankenstein, Dracula, Dorian Gray, I have Wuthering Heights as well. I also have just a couple trinkets up here. I have this little glass carving of a bat, this little antique pipe that I bought, and a little skull key from Goonies. I have this little steel pan that I bought, which is cool, and then I have some more little trinkets from stories that I like. I have a bust from the Call of Cthulhu and a little goddess statue from the Legend of Zelda games. And then up here I have this vinyl that my best friend got me for Christmas of the Princess Mononoke soundtrack suite. That's maybe my favorite movie of all time, and I just love the music from it. Joe Hisaishi is one of my heroes, so I framed that and put it up there. And here you can see some of my more sort of interesting instruments that we have. This banjo that I've recorded with a couple times. This is a quarter scale double bass, so very low, but you know, compact and fits the space well. This is my viola that I'm on like a 5th grade level of being able to play, and this is a mandolin that I don't actually love the sound of the mandolin typically, but I really enjoy finding weird sounds on it because of how many strings it has. It can create some really strange atmosphere and sound effects to mix into the musical landscape. I also have a lot of inspiring little objects and trinkets over here on my desk. I have this beautiful little sort of antique steampunk looking clock that I picked up at an antique store. I have this little bust that my dad gave me as a gift of, you know, the maestro himself, Beethoven, probably my favorite, you know, classical or romantic composer. I have this little potted plant that my partner gave me, which is adorable and hideous, and I love him. And I have this candle, which is from a brand called, I believe they're called Cantrip Candles. Yes, they are. And this is called Adventurer's Emporium, which these are sort of Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy inspired candles, which smell fantastic. This is a little plushie that I have of Gigi from Kiki's Delivery Service. If you couldn't tell from the Princess Mononoke thing that I talked about, I'm a big fan of Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki movies. And another one of my favorites is Kiki's Delivery Service. So right on top of my computer here, I keep this little plushie of Gigi from Kiki's Delivery. One more thing that I have here is I just picked this up on a trip to North Carolina. There's this massive antique and thrift store there, and I picked up this Life Stories of Great Composers book, which is incredible. It's from 1919, and it has these records of the life stories of some of my favorite composers, you know, Beethoven, Brahms, Mozart, Handel, Schumann, you know, everybody. And it's tied like this because it is so old that the spine is not actually connected to the pages themselves. So it would fall apart if I were not holding onto it for dear life. Another thing that I find really important is having a lot of live instruments to noodle around on here in the studio, some of which I am better at playing than others. A lot of these I just kind of keep around just to fiddle with and find interesting sounds on. Like up here I have a couple of electric guitars and a bass that I sometimes record with, but mainly are just for playing around with. Sometimes I discover an idea with that I can bring into my digital writing landscape. Coolest instrument in my collection is this one, which is called a bowed psaltery. It's a type of zither that you can hammer or you can pluck, and it just has this really shrill sound. But the main way of playing it is that you have these two little curved bows that you play it like this, and it creates this really interesting buzzy drone that I've used a couple times, and I really love anytime I get the chance to mix that into something. I think that's about everything I want to show off. This is Ludwig. He's not typically allowed into this room, so this is a big occasion for him. But yeah, thank you so much for checking out my studio and your interest in my work, and I hope that maybe I'll do another one of these in a year or two, and you can sort of see how my space has evolved and how my process has evolved. So thank you so much for watching.